Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Tea Time with TeaCup Entrepreneurs. I'm Steph Pellish, your hostess here at Tea Time. And today I am so excited to be joined by Chelsie Collier, the owner and founder of Impact Behavior Therapy. And she is a BCBA, which we're going to learn a little bit more about what that means, and a licensed behavior specialist and a board certified behavior analyst. She's also a mom of three young kids. And we're going to talk about all the things behavior, kids, life, managing family and a business, and what that looks like for Chelsie. And so I'm excited to dive in. Welcome, Chelsie. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me today, Steph. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. I'm excited because many of the women that I interview have all sorts of businesses. And in terms of who I've interviewed so far, you are the first that I can really relate to from a professional standpoint, because as a pediatric occupational therapist, I actually do know what a BCBA is. And I do know a lot about what you do, but I would love for you to share with our audience what is a BCBA? What does that mean? And then we'll kind of dive into what your business does.
Yeah, I'm glad that you know what a BCBA is because most people don't know. I typically, when somebody asks me what I do, I typically say I work with kids with autism or I work with kids with developmental disabilities because it is a very small field. But basically, a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst, is someone who works with children. Well, they can work with anyone, but it's working on principles of behavior. So what we do is work on increasing behaviors that we want to see, socially appropriate behaviors, and then decreasing any challenging behaviors. A lot of the kids that we work with have aggression, self-interest behavior, running away from parents, some of those safety behaviors. So we're working on decreasing those behaviors while increasing things like communication skills, social skills, play skills, just to help kids, reach their full potential. So we work with principles of reinforcement to try to make it fun and exciting. ABA, so we do ABA as a board certified behavior analyst, which is applied behavior analysis. So that's kind of what it is in a nutshell. And there's lots of different types of it, but yeah, so that's a board certified behavior analyst for you.
Love it. So let me ask, did you always know that this was something you wanted to do, or how did you find out that this job was even a thing or that you wanted to do it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I actually love answering this question because I had no idea what it was. And,
Mhm.
I went to undergrad for child and family studies. It was psychology and sociology. I knew I wanted to work with kids, but had no idea in what capacity. Um,
Same.
and yeah, and then so it kind of fell into my lap. I worked right out of college at a residential treatment facility. So, these kids had the most severe behaviors. They were living away from home. And, we did ABA with these children and really saw beautiful increases in positive behaviors and decreases in some of these really severe behaviors. So I saw it worked and I fell in love with the field. And I actually looked at BCBA and said, oh, I could work in a school and have summers off and kind of do what a teacher does, but not be a teacher. Sign me up. And it's it's funny now because that was kind of why I went into it. And then now I'm working, around the clock, owning my
Even more, yes.
yeah, through
It's
the summer, every night, all weekends. So
Yeah, it's funny. I have a similar story because I knew I wanted to work with kids. I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. My mom was a teacher, but it never really called to me. And I had a coach one day, someone said, "What do you do?" And she was like, "I play with kids all day." And
yeah.
I was, "What do you do?" Because whatever you do, that's what I'm going to do. And
Right.
she happened to be a pediatric occupational therapist. That's how I learned about OT in my probably junior year of high school,
Okay.
and just fell in love with occupational therapy. But yeah, I knew I wanted to hang around kids
Yeah. Yeah.
and work with kids. So I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of how I got in the field, and I've worked a lot of different ABA agencies, and
Mhm.
have kind of moved through a lot of different companies. So from residential to I did school based. I helped open a couple centers in Delaware, so I kind of saw that side of it of the clinical private practice
Sure.
side. Then I went to a more national role where I was traveling all over the country and consulting in schools and helping open clinics around in this bigger company. And then that's kind of gave me all the knowledge and skills that then I eventually could go out on my own and felt like I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
So
So did that kind of give you the entrepreneurial bug, or did you have that beforehand?
So, you know what? I don't think I really had the bug, but in ABA, there are a lot of practices that, they're not always clinician owned. And so they are, doing things, more for about numbers and dollars and cents and not really for the clinical reason behind it. So, I saw a lot of that out there while I was in my, work journey. And a lot of me was saying like this is not what I want to do and this is not how it should be done. It should be quality over quantity. And I really felt so passionate and strongly about that I was complaining about it a lot that I eventually was like, I just want to do my own thing because I am so passionate about the field. I want to make it a better place. And instead of complaining about it, like I should just go and do it. So it's kind of almost out of necessity. And, I, have always kind of grown into be leadership positions and I like that leadership role. So I think that kind of helped too. And then, with the need being there and wanting to do something different, that's where Impact was kind of born from that vision.
Yeah. So what made you take that leap, take that step into, like, was there a pivotal moment? You just, you know what? I need to do this. I can go ahead and you just did it, or was it a little bit more of a process?
It was a process, I'd say. So
Okay.
when I was helping kind of start up a lot of these centers in Delaware, my husband, who is, my biggest cheerleader, he was like, you could do this. You could do this yourself. Why don't you just go start your own business? And I was like, nah, nah, nah. I'm happy working, all these other places. And he's like, well, just get your LLC, so that you can, do it when you want to. And so very slowly, in the car, I think we were driving to Vermont for a ski trip one time and we were writing down a business case and I was like thinking of names and writing a mission statement and just kind of, making it fun and,
Yeah.
just all just making a vision of it and ended up filing for my LLC, creating a name, creating all that. And so I got that, I think, in 2016, my LLC for Impact Behavior Therapy, but then didn't do anything with it. So filed all the paperwork and just had it there in the background because I was still, I was getting married at the time. I was, starting a new job. I was happy where I was. So I had it in just
Keeping it in
hanging
your
out in
back
the
pocket.
back. Yep. But didn't do much with it. And then really the pivotal moment that set me over the edge was I still wasn't doing anything. I got pregnant with twins. I was like, okay, well now I'm definitely not going out on my own. I have twin babies at home.
Mhm.
Went back to work at my full-time job, but then the pandemic hit. And so I was furloughed from my full-time job and I was home with my twins and so I thought, now's the time to get credentialed with all these insurance companies. We bill medical insurance. So I spent all, that time home being furloughed, getting credentialed, getting all the background work done and then, very slowly started seeing one client at a time, all via telehealth at the time. Also during this time found out I was pregnant with my third baby. So
So you're
um,
raising two babies,
Yep.
birthing a baby physically and birthing a business
Yes.
baby all at the same time.
All
Okay.
at the same time. So
Okay.
yes, my very first Zoom sessions with my first private clients, I have a big pregnant belly. And then I had my third baby in 2021 and, was home with him and slowly started seeing clients again. And so then it just, I was all about my vision was always slow and steady. So, one client at a time, I would see them direct myself and then I would do the direct therapy, the oversight, the treatment planning, and worked out all the kinks of billing figuring it out, with just me. And then late 2021, I brought on my first employee and, kind of went from there. But it was
Yeah.
a slow process, but the pandemic really did give me the kick in the butt I needed to get going and, just all right, time to do it.
Yeah, so in 2021, you started seeing clients virtually, and now you own a brick and mortar.
Yep, yep.
And so when did you open that building?
So I saw clients virtually until the world opened back up and then started seeing clients in home.
Mhm.
So I would go to clients' homes and see them there. I then brought on a couple more RBTs. So RBTs are registered behavior technicians. So they would work under me. I would be, overseeing them and still, doing the treatment planning, parent training, and doing the billing and the business side of things. And then so we had a few doing in home, and then we did that for about 3 years, and then last year we opened our brick and mortar in Fort Washington. So we opened. It's about 5,000 square feet. We have a sensory room, and really the need to open that was again another. When I started, I was like, I'm just going to do in home in school, but then there was a need. So all of
Yeah.
these kids that I was seeing, they weren't appropriate for a typical preschool. They maybe didn't have the prerequisite skills that they needed to, wait, sit at a table. Maybe their behaviors were just too severe for a regular preschool teacher to handle in that setting. So, I saw such a need. So that's where the center was born. I try not to call it a clinic because it sounds so sterile, but we try to make it, I mean, Steph, you've seen it, but we make
It's
it.
beautiful and
Yeah.
fun and cute. It looks like a preschool. It looks
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
somewhere where kids would go and play and set up for their day.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's kind of the goal of the center is to be, almost like a transitional preschool program that we're helping prepare kids for typical preschool. So, it's muted colors and it's kind of Montessori-esque with wooden toys and, try to make it fun and somewhere that kids want to be as they learn these skills to then eventually get to a typical preschool. So that's how the center was born. And of course, when we had more space, we needed more staff and more kids. And so it kind of snowballed from there. And
Yes.
we're trying what one thing I see happen at other companies is they grow too quickly and then
Mhm.
they, are kind of outside their means and can't handle it. So we've been really, really conscientious of making sure that we're growing with quality controlled growth. So
I love
um
that.
yeah, so and I really think it all comes back to hiring the right people. When you have the right team under you, that is what is going to take you the miles that you need to go. So, I still do all the interviews for direct therapists, for other clinical supervisors coming on board, and, make sure that they have the heart to be in this field because, we can teach ABA all day, but you have to want to be here and help kids. And, I think it comes back to that. So now we've really grown in the last year
Yes,
and
so having all of these employees and needing to hire and sometimes probably pretty quickly, has there been something that has surprised you about, you said you've always wanted to and you always have stepped into this leadership role, but now that you're the end, right? You are the start and the beginning at the business. Everything comes back to you. So has there been something that has surprised you in this role, having employees underneath of you versus and being the owner versus being a part of a ladder?
Yeah, well, I actually think, I mean, I've learned to love it. I wasn't sure if I would love being the end decision for all
Uh-huh.
decisions, being the final call. And, I do love it because I think at the end of the day, I think my heart's in the right place. So if we have a kid with a need, I am able to say, this kid needs two staff today because his behaviors are escalated. I'm not going to wait for somebody to tell me that's okay. I can just make that call and I'm always going to make the best call for the kiddo. So, it might cost me money, but at the end of the day, it's my money. I don't care. That is a cost of
Right.
business
You
that's for
you
me.
get to choose what the priorities are. And
Yeah.
so that means
Yeah.
you get to put the kids first
Yeah.
versus again, like
Yes.
you've got insurance companies and you mentioned too earlier about clinician-owned practices. When you have a clinician-owned practice, the clinician is then there seeing what the needs are versus another agency that's not in it. And so then your employees don't have agency to make decisions. Well, we could really use another staff member for this kid. Well,
Mhm. Yeah.
we don't have anybody to make that decision. The end all is nope, you just have to deal with it. And, I've been in a lot of daycares, a lot of preschools, a lot of homes, and some days are just not great with kids. They just need a little extra support, or some kids just need a little adaptation. And so how do you work with your employees, or what kind of agency, I guess, do you give your employees to make those kind of decisions when you've got a kid who, maybe it's a full moon. Maybe it's the Tuesday after a holiday weekend. There are so
Yeah.
many things that impact kids. And when you go into a group of kids, you see that those little things, we joke and we say, like, oh, it's a full moon. But then you walk into a classroom and you're like, oh, I see that it is a full moon, or it was a 3-day weekend and now everybody's got to transition back. And so, how do you give that to your staff, that agency to your staff to make the adjustments for the kids as they need to?
Yeah, that's a good question. We try to do a lot of proactive trainings. We have a monthly staff meeting every month that we go over, concerns, and we also have clinical supervisors in the building at all times. So there's always someone that can, if somebody's feeling overwhelmed, they know somebody can always tap them out and swap with them, cover their kid, take a breather. While we're very much client first, we're also employee first, just person first, I think.
Yeah.
And if, even an employee, a staff member, an RBT, they might be having a bad day. We understand that. And, we're happy to sub them out. And we have a lead therapist role that is always a floater staff at the center that can help out, step in. But we do a lot of those proactive trainings monthly so that we can go over different topics, just make sure that everyone has the tools to feel prepared. We do see pretty challenging behaviors. So I want to make sure the staff are prepared for that. And everything we do is from a trauma-informed training lens. So it's all compassionate care approach, which I think sets us different from other ABA companies out there that, it's very black and white, and ABA sometimes gets a bad name for that. But we are very much, a kid can have a bad day and we are not going to hold a demand. We might drop that demand because he didn't sleep well, or because, he didn't eat his breakfast, and, he's a person too. And so it's very much compassion based with our kids and with our staff. And so I think them having those tools, knowing that, there's support for them, it really it means the world to them. They know that support's there. And so I think they know what tools to use, and they have the autonomy to, run their session how they think is best for that kid that day. We also have an outdoor play area that I think is very important. Everybody gets fresh air every day,
Yes.
not stuck in one room. And we have music therapists come in. So we do a lot of staff appreciation. We just had staff massages for end of the summer. We try to do, buy them lunch and just different things to show our appreciation.
Yeah, because when you're taking care of your staff, they're then going to take care of your clients, and then you have happy clients. So when you have happy staff, happy clients, Andrea Saul, one of our members, she has a happy people culture program, and she talks about that. When you have happy staff, you have a great business,
Yeah.
because it means that they're showing up. They want to show up for work. They want to show up for the clients. The clients feel that. And
Mhm.
of course, you need to be client first and deal with the needs of the client, but it's your employees that are interacting with them. And so I love that approach. I love that is what you do. I would love to talk about, you mentioned ABA gets a bad rap sometimes. And I have had some ABA therapists that I've worked with in the past that I just look at and think, what is your goal? Is your goal just to get this kid to do something and write your note and check the box and leave? I actually have a background in floor time and DIR,
Mhm.
which when you look at both of those, it's a different model for anybody who's not familiar. it's a different model. And from a baseline, from the foundation, they are very similar. But from how they then interact with the child and look at things, it is a little bit different because floor time is more child led and playful obstruction. ABA can sometimes look like that when it is relationship first, but a lot of times it seems to be more task oriented first, which I think is where some of the negative criticism comes in from it. So I would love for you to talk about that and share, what you do that is more client first.
Yeah, and that's a perfect way to put it because ABA, there's, what people call old school ABA and the more traditional ABA, which it sounds like you may have worked with in your
And I've
profession.
also worked with some great ABA
Yeah,
therapists.
yeah. But a lot, and I think it is phasing out, but it used to be very much compliance based, more working on, things like functional play skills and task completion. And it was more about completing a task and any means possible to get that done. And that is pretty much everything we are not in my practice. So again, seeing what I didn't want to do when I started an ABA, it never felt right. It felt a little icky to be physically prompting kids and all of that, but that's what, my up highs were telling me to do. And all the time, all the while, I always thought like this doesn't feel right. And so as I grew in my career and got more confident, that's another reason I wanted to start my own company is because we are very similar to Floor Time DIR. We are child-led natural environment training, and a lot of places say they can do that, but we there is so much research on when kids are engaged and they're having fun and they're happy, they are learning more. And so it is just, you almost think of like you're playing with a child and they're happy and they're engaged and you're teaching them in that moment. You're looking at books, you're talking about the pictures. They're pointing to the pictures. That is work, that's progress. It's
Yeah,
play-based. You're embedding it when they don't even know that they're working, but they are learning. And, that is the beauty of what we do. And so I think if that is taught well to the therapist on how to do that,
yeah,
really, a lot of times you come to the center, it looks like the kids are just playing, but it's because we're embedding those programs and
right.
reinforcing those things in that natural play setting. So it's still ABA principles, but it's very natural. It's never compliance based. It's never you have to do this. Um, we really try to stay away from that while still using those principles of reinforcement, to try to increase positive behaviors.
I
So
love
yeah, so there is some ABA out there, but we're very different from that.
it. So I'm curious, I'm gonna kind of pivot a little bit. How has that impacted your own parenting?
Uh, I would say being a parent has made me a better BCBA for sure because
Yeah.
I so
Oh,
much more relate to parents and
yes.
understand how hard it is with three neurotypical children. So, I really have such a, more humbled perspective and, I get it more. I don't think it's made me a better parent in any way.
I'm sure it has.
I
I'm
am
sure that it
I
has. And
I always hesitate to tell people I'm a behavior analyst because my children are wild and crazy and I don't have a lot of follow through with them the way I know I can coach people to
right.
be with their kiddos that we work with. So I always say do as I say, not as I do. But
You
no,
know, when I first started in early intervention, I would go to families' homes and I'd work with the mom, I'd work with the kid, and this mom of one kid who was a stay-at-home mom, she would talk about how busy she would be. And I was like, what are you doing all day that you're so busy and you don't have time to do these two things that I asked you to do with your child? And then I had kids and I was like, wow, okay. All right,
I know.
Steph, maybe she actually was busy doing all of the things with no time for herself.
Yeah.
And so to then add more things, and I always was very compassionate and respectful of the fact that families already have routines and systems in place at home. And I'm coming in their home and I'm asking them to do something. So I wasn't asking them to do 10 hours of like, make sure you sit down with your child and do all of these things. I was being realistic with what my expectations were. But when they were like, oh, we forgot or we didn't do that, I'd be like,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it does. It
And
changes your perspective
yes,
completely.
but even then at home, my own kids were having meltdowns or not eating. And, I'm helping kids learn how to eat new foods. Meanwhile, my daughter, still to this day, she's 15, is the slowest eater, but was such a slow eater. And our meals were so stressful at dinner. And for me, part of my parenting journey was like learning how to be more compassionate with myself because I could be compassionate with the families. I'm like, oh, you didn't get it right. Like, okay, that's fine. We'll figure it out or we'll do it differently or we'll adapt it. Learning to do that for myself. And, my kids, sometimes they're great and amazing and they can follow some directions. And other times
Yeah.
my 5-year-old needs to go back to school because it has been a long summer and I need the break, right? Like I need her to have structure. She needs structure. I need structure, but we need time apart. We need that village. We need that support. And yeah,
Yeah. And when you're in it every day, it just is hearing a different perspective really goes so far. So, we require parents to do parent coaching, parent training with our, every kiddo that we see, we incorporate the parents in that aspect of it for carryover. But, even me with my own family, like we use actually a parent coach from TeaCup. Because when you're in it, it's just so hard to see. So,
yeah,
having that third party to tell you, take a step back, this is what you need to do. I practice what I preach. I have a parent coach for myself, for
yeah.
my own kids, and then I help coach other people on,
Yeah,
their
because yes, when you're in it, it is really hard to see outside of it. I remember when my youngest was like 1 or 2, she would not separate from me at bedtime. And I was talking to my own therapist about it. And she's like, Steph, if you were talking to a client and that your client was telling you this about their child, what would you say? Oh, I was like, right. I would tell them to lean in, that she's feeling anxious, to spend a little extra time, and then that will decrease the anxiety. In 2 days,
Yep.
the nighttime anxiety stopped. And I was like, oh, see, I do know this. I just need that external reminder. And yeah, I think that's so important for parents too, because they think that as an expert, you just know and do all of the things. It's like,
Right.
no, I know it.
But
But
doing it is another
but
story.
doing it is one thing. And then also putting it into practice when you can't always see outside of it.
Mhm.
And even in business, right? Like we own these businesses, we operate these businesses, but sometimes we get so stuck inside of the business
Mhm.
that it's hard to see outside of it. So I'd love to know, do you have some kind of process that takes you outside to look at the business, or are you kind of in the mix of it all often?
Yeah, that's a great question because that is actually what my goal is and has been this year. Kind of the second half of the year. The first half, we were really, as we've grown, we're making sure our policies and procedures and all of our pieces are in place that we are following the policy. We've written them all, but now making sure that they get followed and, that everything is in place operationally. But this second half of the year, and I'm sorry about the noise. Can you hear that?
Mm-mm. No, I
So
hear my own kids, so that's
okay.
fine.
But this second half of the year, I'm really trying to not, for all of this time so far, I've been so much in the business. I was working as the clinical director, so I was overseeing all of the master's level staff. I was overseeing all the RBTs. I was really in it every single day. So I'm really intentionally focusing on stepping back a little bit. I now have an administrative director in place, a clinical director in place, scheduling, intake coordinator. So I have those pieces that are doing a lot of that. So now, I'm trying to step out so I can work more on the business rather than in the business and,
Yeah.
trying to take that step back and trust the people that I hired and, giving them that, ability to be able to run that without me right there all the time.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Because that's what's going to allow you to grow is actually stepping out of your role, putting someone else in there so that you can grow that next level. Have
mhm.
you did you get some good advice, or is that just something that naturally, because of the work that you had done before, that you knew that was something that you needed to do?
Well, kind of both, but I don't even know where I first heard it, but that saying you can't work on your business if you're in your business, that was kind of always in my head. And I'm so much in my business. So in April, we finally hired that clinical director role. And so that was kind of my goal from there. It was hard because I spent a lot of time making sure to find the right people, because it is
Yep.
my baby. And
Yeah,
I want to make
absolutely.
sure it's being run the way I want it to run with the quality. And so stepping away was hard, but I'm still in it every day, but I'm just not, I'm trying to, I'm thinking of the next step. And if we did want to open another center, or if, we wanted to grow in any capacity, I have to make sure the first one can run without me there every day smoothly, and then I can move
Yeah.
from there. And again, it comes back to that intentional quality growth instead of just like open, 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 do. It's very much, let's make sure this one's good to go. Policies and procedures are being followed. People are good in their roles, and then we can
Well,
move.
and that makes it so much easier to duplicate. You can then take all of the systems that are in place here and put them there, and then again, adapt them as you need to. But versus, well, we still haven't quite figured it out here, but now we've got to figure it out over here too. And it's just, they're both kind of in the air. Taking one that works and replicating it is going to be a
Yeah.
lot easier. More seems like more work, but it's more work on the front end that should help you grow in the future. So, is there a big dream that you have of many locations or growing this location? Do you know what that looks like, or do you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I get that one all the time. I don't really, I feel like all of this kind of happened out of necessity. And, I never had a dream to open my own company, but then there was such a need. I did it. And then I was like, I'm never going to open a center. And then there was a need. And so I did it. Now,
Yeah.
you know, I always like, all right, just one center, not two. But we have so many great clinicians that are coming up in their practice. They want to stay with impact. We have, so many kids on our wait list waiting for services. It's such an unmet need for that
Yeah.
quality ABA service. So, part of me, that pulls at me, and I know there's a need there. So I know we have great people that can do it. So I think the goal would probably be, maybe two, max three centers in Montgomery County, and then, kind of call it at that. I think after that, the quality, even with best intentions, kind of you're not able to keep it, but for now, keeping like one to two centers probably, and just go from there.
I love that. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
I'm curious too, if you could go back to, you said you opened your LLC in 2016. If you could go back to your 2016 self and tell her what you did with that LLC,
I
what
know.
would she say?
You wouldn't believe me, that's for sure. I'm still amazed every day. I mean, it really, if I I know people don't always love their job, but I really do. I leave work every day and I'm just so proud of the team that we have, the families that we have built such an amazing community. The kids are making great progress. It's a safe, inclusive space. Everyone welcomes everyone. I mean, I love what we've built. And so I'm so proud of it. It really fills my bucket, what we're doing. So, I'd love to share that with 2016-year-old, 2026
16
me.
version of you. Yes.
Yes, that version of me. But I do think the years, a lot of new BCBAs want to just start their own practice, but I think the years of being in different places and seeing what not to do has really helped me to be able to leave all of that out. We really focus on our company culture. We really focus on kids first, natural environment. Like I knew what I wanted when we built
Yeah.
this company, and I make it a very intentional effort every day to maintain that, the culture, the community, everything about it. So I'm very proud of it, but a lot of effort went into that and continues to go into it. So, I think it is a labor of love, but I do love what we have going. So
Yeah. I think that's something too, just the journey part of it, the fact that it's not just you wake up one day, you decide to make an LLC, you put money in to invest, and then you're making all this money and it just works.
yeah, that's
That's
not how it
never
goes.
really how it goes. I think there's like I think somewhere we're sold this idea, and I'm not sure where we're sold this idea, because if you read any book about an entrepreneur or a business owner that made it, it was trials and tribulations. It was time, like you said, it was being passionate, but also being intentional. And when it didn't work, doing it again because they had that drive, they had that passion. And it sounds like you've got this passion to support kids and you're just going to keep building it. And as the need comes, you'll keep meeting it in whatever that might look like. And I love that. I love, just you're talking about the passion or you're talking about how much you love your work. Like I can feel your passion. I can see it on your face when you're talking about it, when you're talking about your employees and the kids. And so that is something that is so needed for this population, for these families, because they are under resourced right now. And when they go to schools or centers that aren't resourced for them for whatever reason, it's amazing to have a space like yours. And so I would love, thank you for doing that. Thank you for creating that for them. But I would love for you to share, like, where can someone find out more about Impact and what you do?
Yeah, so they can go to our website. It's just www.impactbehaviortherapy.com. And we also have Instagram and Facebook. There's a contact us form if anyone's interested in services or if, anybody is looking for a, position in this type of field, that's kind of where we send families and people to go. So.
I love it. And I'll share all those things in the show notes as well. But Chelsie, thank you so much for this conversation. Like I said, I know that it's such a needed resource for families and kids. Not, I know we talked a little bit about autism, but for kids of all diverse needs. And so I look forward to seeing how you grow and where you grow and just hear more about the families that you're supporting. So thank you for your work.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me here today, Steph. I really appreciate it. And, one thing as a business owner, the TeaCup Entrepreneur Group has been invaluable. And I just love having that support as a business owner. So thank you for all you do as well. And thanks for having me today.
Oh, well, thank you.
All right.
And stay tuned for our next Tea Time with TeaCup Entrepreneurs. And we'll see you then.